Heroin and prescription drug abuse is rising in concern across the country, and this week the Santa Fe New Mexican reported on policy changes for the distribution of naloxone, which is a drug that can help prevent overdose deaths. Community organizations that work with people at risk of dying from overdoses are raising concerns about access to the drug. Our line opinion panelists are ready to debate what should happen next on this issue. I'm joined at the table this week by Tom Garrity with the Garrity Group PR. Julianne Grimm is back. She's the editor of the Santa Fe Reporter. We're very pleased to welcome Marcia Garcia. She's with Strategies 360, Marcia, and Daniel Foley, former New Mexico House Minority Whip. Now, Julianne, Northern New Mexico has been no stranger to heroin overdoses for a long time. It's just been a bedeviling situation for our state. It's interesting when you read the article, and Margaret Wright did a great job with it. She just was a terrific story. We have vans out on the road with nurses. We have ways to get this out there, but something has happened with this idea of overdoses over the last year. In the editing and reporting of the story, what's been going on there that makes these folks want to take a step back and look at this issue all over again?
It's really not clear.
Yeah.
And part of why it's not clear is the reluctance on the part of officials to really talk about it. I haven't had a chance to visit with Margaret about the reporting process, but what I see when I look at that story is very minimal input from the Board of Pharmacy, which is apparently responsible for kind of mucking up or kind of slowing down the distribution. But then you've got the health department has set a priority that this drug can save lives.
Okay.
And yet, the health department doesn't talk to the New Mexican for the story.
Interesting.
And I think this is a pattern that we're seeing in the administration that makes it very difficult to really determine what's going on.
Daniel, you know, folks have issues and problems with drug abuse, certainly, and there's ways to solve this. But we're talking about people at the risk of overdose. We're talking right at the brink, right at the edge, not quite to rehab yet, but right at the edge to keep people alive. Should there be extra emphasis because this drug can be so effective in that regard?
Well, I mean, obviously anything we can do to help, you know, stifle people from dying from drug overdosing is something we should be looking at. There's no doubt about it. I think part of the problem in some of the stuff that I've read outside of our conversation about this is that I think there's somewhat of a reluctancy from people in the field that are saying, we're kind of wasting our time. I mean, the drugs are changing so fast. There's so many different compounds. There's so many different types of drugs. The heroin is different grades that every time we figure out a way to get there to help someone, the dealers figure out a way to beat us to the punch. And I think there's also a tendency now with a lot of these folks that are on the streets on a daily basis saying, I can't do this anymore. I mean, I can't get up every day and spend 8 hours a day going to people that are ending their lives, young people that are ending their lives senselessly. You know, I think it's clearly an issue in New Mexico, but it's been an issue in New Mexico for 30 years. I mean, this is no new news story, especially in northern New Mexico. And so I think it's going to take the community saying enough is enough. But, you know, I don't know if New Mexico is going to do that. We've had a DWI problem since we've been a state. We've had a drug problem in northern New Mexico. I mean, we got a meth problem in other parts of it. I mean, it's just it seems to be the constant beat of the drum in New Mexico that somewhere there's a problem with addiction to something somewhere in New Mexico, and it's going to take some leadership to address it.
Exactly. Marcia, welcome. Good to see you here at the table. Glad you're here. You know, Julianne mentioned the pharmacy board. The executive director, Ben Kesner, his quote I've seen in a couple of places is certain rules have to be applied. You can't just pass this naloxone out. I don't think anyone's proposing, I don't read anyone proposing just hand it out, but there's got to be a happy medium here where if you've got people that close to the edge, we can make an assumption that the daily grind of life is probably a difficulty, meaning getting to certain places to meet with a nurse, to meet with somebody who's authorized to distribute this stuff. So there's got to be a way to close that gap, it seems to me. What's your thought on that?
Absolutely, and realistically, the Board of Pharmacy should be leading the way to get more help to more people as soon as possible, as opposed to creating more red tape and more bureaucracies to make this harder for people that are truly in need. I mean, last year alone, this drug saved over 900 people in our state. It reversed more than 900 overdoses. And I mean, if we save just one person, that's enough. You know, and so they should not be making this harder. They should be leading the way to ensure that more people are being saved.
Exactly. Tom, interesting, same point though. We have what Marcia just mentioned, but there's a gap still. And is the pharmacy, the Department of Pharmacy, the board doing all it can? Is this the right approach? Or is this pulled back just a little too much for some
Well, I mean, obviously, I think there's always, you want some folks who want, no regulation. We need to get this out as quickly as possible. And the others, on the other side, you go, no, we got to have a lot of regulation. I think, we got to do what saves lives. And I think that's the point of the coverage that I've been seeing. It's not just heroin. Prescription drugs like OxyContin, is really, these are drugs that are highly addictive. And all people need to do is rifle through other people's medicine cabinets. And the industry has been doing a tremendous job in being able to make sure that drugs or you can't crush the drugs, because some things that folks who are drug abusers will want to do is to crush the drug, and so if they're able to, then that's a bad thing. And so there's this anti-deterrent opioids is something new that's generated by industry, which basically makes renders the drug ineffective. And so what we need to do, I think, in New Mexico is find a way to, let pharmaceutical, with the right regulations, being able to make sure that their formularies, or whatever it is that they call it, are available to all New Mexicans as quickly as possible.
Gene, they just did a national, it was the ESPN or Sports Illustrated, just did that national story about the football players, and two of the people they highlighted in the story were kids from Albuquerque.
That's exactly right.
I mean, that wound up with football injuries, wound up addicted to OxyContin, oxycodone, and things like that from their injuries, turned to heroin and wound up dying of overdosing.
They were very sad stories.
They're horrible stories, and they're stories that are affecting every walk of life. This problem it's across cultures, it's across nationalities, religions, gender, it doesn't matter. And we just got to get serious about addressing this. I think getting this stuff out to help is clearly important, but I think there has to be a component about educating and trying to figure out a way to clean this up, because just figuring out a way to help more people that when they overdose is not stopping them. And I've advocated that we've got to relook at our legal system when it comes to drug incarcerations, but there's something that's got to be looked at on these hardcore drugs, because it is really changing lives in the state for the worse.
And I think it's addiction services too is really an issue here, that we don't have enough treatment beds. We don't have them in the north. I doubt you all have them here.
You got to drive 8 hours to go see somebody. You get away from your family.
You're on a waiting list for 6 weeks, and I think that we also need to really look at the root of what creates addiction. What makes you feel like you want to be out of it? Those base root causes are.
And we don't want to pay enough for those facilities to see people. We keep cutting what we're going to pay those facilities, knowing, no matter what, knowing they're going to wind up in jail, knowing that we're going to incarcerate that person for $50,000, $60,000, $80,000 a year, but we're going to continue to say we want someone to open up a rehab facility, an intake facility, take care of them, and we'll give you $12,000 a year to take care of this person. You can't do that. I mean, we've got to start looking at, we're either going to pay in the front end or pay in the back end, and at some point we've got to get serious about treating these folks, getting them back into their communities, mentoring other young people so they don't make the same mistakes they make, and get this stuff taken care of.
Marcia, interestingly, the rules, as I'm reading the story now, again, that require a direct consultation. I want to focus on those two words, direct, what constitutes a direct consultation with a specified prescriber for this, but it also shuts out what Julianne mentioned. There were organizations in Santa Fe specifically who were in the business of doing this, and they're sort of shut out of the game now a little bit. It seems to me there's got to be a way to, Interfaith Community Shelter and Santa Fe Recovery Center, they've got to get them back in the game. This is what these people do all the time. You see what I mean? Something seems kind of odd there.
Absolutely. I mean, and what it seems like they're just creating more bureaucracies, more red tape, and almost creating a system that is going to not help people as opposed to helping people.
That's right.
And something that Tom mentioned earlier about pharmacies. I mean, right now in New Mexico, pharmacists have the ability to prescribe this to people, even if they don't have the prescription for it. If they have anything that could turn into some type of an accidental overdose, they can ask them, would you like this?
That's right.
And that should be farther out.
Right.
So these organizations, these community advocates that are actually trying to help people on a daily basis and are getting people that are coming to them, their hands shouldn't be tied.
Right.
If anything, that administration should be helping them so that they could reach out to more people. There needs to be some form of regulations, but at the same time telling them that they can't do this anymore and allowing more people on the street that need the help without the help, that's also not the answer.
Especially folks who are on the brink like this. This is not, something that is like you can't fake it. If you're on the verge of an overdose, that's not something you can fake.
And you can't plan for it either.
That's right.
Exactly.
I don't see how you're like, well, maybe I should go talk to a nurse because maybe I might overdose tomorrow.
Right.
But you're going to need a consultation.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that's seems like a difficult thing
It's
to
tricky.
accomplish for someone who's already in that position.
Exactly right. Up next, we hear why some residents of Mora County continue to try to prevent fracking around their communities.